From prostitute to promised lineage, Rahab's miraculous journey of faith and divine redemption. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, a whisper of an invasion began to spread through the ancient city of Jericho, a stronghold clinging to its walls of stone and fear. Among the residents, a woman named Rahab lived on the edge of society, marked by her past as a prostitute. In a world eager to diminish her worth, she learned to traverse the shadows, her heart a tumult of despair and hope. The townsfolk spoke of the approaching Israelites, led by a man named Joshua, who followed a God believed to have immeasurable power. As dusk painted the sky in strokes of deep orange and violet, Rahab's ears pricked at the soft knock on her door. 2 men, weary and resolute, stood before her, their eyes darting nervously, aware of the peril that lay outside. Unknown to her neighbors, they were spies sent by Joshua to gather intelligence for the looming attack. Instinctively, Rahab bade them enter, her heart racing with the thrill of uncertainty. She sensed that through them lay not just sanctuary but a divine opportunity that could alter her destiny forever. The men, weary from their journey, settled into her humble abode as Rahab strained to listen. Their words ignited something profound within her, a flicker of faith, kindled by their reverent tales of the God of Israel. This deity, they spoke, was a being of mercy and strength, capable of transforming lives in an instant, even lives besmirched by shame. "Swear to me by the Lord that you will spare my family when you come to conquer this place," she implored, a tremor of urgency lacing her voice. The weight of her request hung heavy. The spies exchanged glances, recognizing the fervent spark shimmering in her haunted eyes. Grounded in desolation yet rising toward hope, they assured Rahab, instructing her to mark her window with a scarlet cord, a symbol of her faith and their covenant. Days turned to nights, and the sun's light crept across Jericho, illuminating its towering walls. Rahab clutched the scarlet cord, its color vibrant against the encroaching shadows. Yet, doubt tugged at her heart. Could the power of this God truly reach a woman so deemed defiled? With each passing moment, her faith strained, becoming a single thread that she clung to amidst the drums of war echoing outside. As the earth trembled beneath the siege, Rahab huddled with her family in the dim light of her home, pressing the cord in desperation. Their fates were intertwined with her act of faith. Outside, chaos mixed with the air, each thud drawing closer and closer. Would the promise given to her endure, or would she too be lost in the impending destruction? In a moment of grave stillness, Rahab peered through her window, her heart still racing. The vibrant scarlet cord glistened like a beacon against the crumbling walls of Jericho, a testament of defiant belief. She understood that God's intent was not merely to conquer, but to rescue. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As the walls began to quake, that fateful moment closed in, and the tension held Rahab's heart in its grip. She dared to believe in the faith that had ignited her spirit, and with it, she cried out silently for God to fulfill his promise. A divine mystery lingered in the air. What would become of her faith in the God of Israel? What deliverance awaited on the brink of calamity? The dust stirred violently as the final moments approached, leaving Rahab's heart swelling with both fear and fierce hope as she braced for the fulfillment of a promise that could change everything. The trumpet sounded as Joshua's voice pierced the air, a clarion call to the hearts of the Israelites. With each blast, the sound resonated like the heartbeat of the nation, echoing faith into the corners of the earth. The people moved as one, stepping into the very rhythm of divine orchestration. Each footfall upon the dusty ground was a declaration, an act of obedience that transcended fear. Rahab, her heart a tempest of anxiety and anticipation, clutched the scarlet cord as she watched the scene unfold beyond her window. The walls of Jericho shuddered as a tremor fueled by divine authority surged through them. She trembled at the sight of her neighbors, a people lost in despair, unaware of the promise made to her. In this pivotal moment, every breath she took was a plea for grace, an appeal for deliverance. The ground quaked under the weight of fervent prayers, and the walls of Jericho began to shake, rattling the very foundations of the city. The clamor and clatter grew louder, shouts of terror mixed with cries of victory erupted. Yet Rahab remained still, her eyes fixed on the cord, the symbol of her flagging hope. She remembered the words of the spies, their voices resounding in her consciousness, firm and unwavering. When we come into the land, you shall tie this scarlet cord in the window through which you let us down. As the dust settled, the walls began to tremble and cracked, the cries of despair swallowed by the divine. But in Rahab's house, a sacred hush enveloped her family. They gathered closely, her heart now a cacophony of prayers and promises. In fervent silence, she reiterated her faith, clinging desperately to the hope instilled by the covenant made with the spies. "We are safe," she whispered, though uncertainty gnawed at her assurance. "The Lord will deliver us." As the walls crumbled around her, Rahab's spirit soared. She had chosen to believe, and in her choice lay a glimmer of redemption. At that moment, her eyes found the scarlet cord, the physical manifestation of her faith. The bright red stood like a banner of defiance against the shadows closing in. She took a deep breath, her countenance shifting from fear to resolute trust. In the distance, Joshua and the Israelites surged forward like a flood of divine purpose. They moved as an unstoppable force, marching forward in faith, guided by a vision unseen but felt deeply in their hearts. The ground shook not just from the destruction of Jericho, but from the birth of a new chapter in God's vast narrative. As the dust began to settle, Rahab marveled at the efficacy of divine promise. Would she truly be spared? Would her family truly find refuge in the God who sees and saves? Within moments, their home transformed into a sanctuary built upon faith. From the outside, chaos reigned, but inside, a stillness lingered, drenched in promise. Then Rahab heard the voices calling her name. Joshua and the two spies had returned, their eyes scanning the landscape and searching for the red cord that shimmered in the dying light. "Your faith has led you to safety," they declared, sweeping her into powerful arms of deliverance, a profound recognition of her brave decision. But as they left the crumbling ruins of Jericho behind, Rahab could not shake the waiting question that lingered in her heart, a haunting melody echoing in the corridors of her mind. What role did God have for her beyond this moment of rescue? In her heart, she sensed that the path unfolding was only the beginning of a divine legacy, one that wove hope through the very fabric of her being. Little did she know, God's plan was far more expansive than she could imagine, and a lineage destined for greatness awaited her engagement in the unfolding drama of salvation. Yet, in the silence that followed the great upheaval, the final mystery remained: how mighty is the hand of God that He weaves the stories of the least expected into His grand design. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, the smoke and dust of Jericho swirled in the air, carrying with it the echoes of defeat and the faint whispers of divine victory. Joshua assembled the Israelites as the sounds of turmoil faded into a solemn hush, and his eyes shone with a fierce resolve. "Today, the Lord has delivered Jericho into our hands," he proclaimed, his voice resonating with authority. "Let all of Israel gather and remember this day, for it marks not just a conquest, but the beginning of a promise fulfilled." The people stood in awe, their hearts swelling with gratitude for the remarkable works of God. They had obeyed, marched, and shouted, yet the true miracle lay not merely in the crumbling walls, but in the deliverance of one whose faith had soared above her past, Rahab the harlot. In the warmth of gathering day, the Israelites celebrated, but among them, a significant reality unfolded that transcended mere conquest. The miracle of grace began to take root in the very heart of a foreigner. While the nation rejoiced, Rahab clung to her remnants of hope, a scarlet thread symbolic of divine mercy. She felt the weight of transformation settle upon her shoulder, though a delicate uncertainty still encircled her soul. "O Lord," she whispered to herself, "what is the purpose you have for me? What future can arise from such a stained past?" Joshua approached her, his countenance that of a leader emboldened by faith. "Rahab, come forth," he called, and as she stepped from her humble shelter, silence swept across the crowd. The weight of her presence was met by the sharp contrast of her past, yet the people looked upon her not with disdain, but with the eyes that acknowledged the mighty works of God. "Your faith has saved you," he declared, gripping her arm gently. "The oath bestowed upon you shall stand. You and your household are safe, for you were a beacon of hope amidst the darkness." More than mere words, these proclamations surged like a tidal wave, washing over her fears and self-doubt. As if spun from divine threads, the story of her redemption began to weave into the larger narrative of a holy people. "Find your family," Joshua continued, "and dwell among us as one united under the promise of the Almighty. You shall no longer be known by your sin, but as a mother of faith." Rahab's heart thrummed wildly with the awakening of new purpose. She could hardly fathom the weight of destiny enveloping her. The promise of belonging was distant, almost foreign, yet unmistakably real. She recalled the spy's words with fervent clarity, "We will protect you and your family, and you will be a witness to our God." As the shadows lengthened and the coalition of Israel prepared to advance, Rahab hurried to her home, gathering her family within her arms. Each embrace felt akin to weaving together the fractured threads of past and future, sewing them into a tapestry of divine grace. "We are safe," she breathed into their ears, speaking both assurance and the powerful truth of hope. Yet deeper questions surfaced as Rahab pondered her role. In the quiet of her heart, the stirring voices of destiny beckoned her to reflect: would she be an outcast forever defined by her past? Or would she rise to bear witness to God's redemptive grace, shining a light that would guide others from despair to promised restoration? In this tumult of thoughts, she felt God's gaze upon her, a gentle, loving encounter that stirred faith to flames of conviction. "But Lord," she whispered in humility, "how am I to fulfill this sacred calling?" And among her musings, a truth began to dawn: there was a divine plan encompassing more than this moment, echoing through the ages. It would reshape not just her future and lineage, but the narrative of salvation itself, culminating in an unexpected tapestry that would eventually welcome even the Gentiles into the embrace of the chosen. Yet as Rahab stood upon the threshold of her destiny, the question remained: what role would this woman of faith play in the story woven by the hand of God? How far-reaching would the promise extend, and who among her descendants would rise to fulfill the sacred covenant? The suspense hung heavy in the air, for Rahab's journey was but the beginning, an unfolding testament to God's astonishing grace, with secrets of divine legacy rippling just beneath the surface of time. As the early dawn broke over the land, illuminating the rugged hills and valleys as if God's light itself had touched each stone, the Israelites stood poised for the next step in their divine journey. The air was still heavy with the fragrance of sacrifice and awe, but a new fervor ignited within their hearts. Joshua, ever the leader blessed by God, called them forth once more. His face bore the marks of a servant who had communed with the Almighty, and his voice carried authority. "Prepare yourselves, O Israel," he commanded, his gaze sweeping over the encamped multitude. "For the Lord has great things in store for us. We shall cross the Jordan, and soon we will take possession of the land promised to our forefathers." The people, stirred by his words, responded with a united roar of anticipation. Their faith is a fire in them, flickering brightly, bolstered by the memory of the fallen walls of Jericho. Yet among the throngs of warriors and leaders, Rahab stood apart. She marveled at the unfolding scenes around her. This was no ordinary moment, for she was more than a woman marked by her past, she was now woven into the tapestry of God's chosen. Memories of her former life clashed with the dawning promise of her new identity. With her family at her side, she felt a profound transformation within, though the tendrils of her past still tugged at her spirit. Could she truly belong among the prosperous descendants of Abraham? Her heart raced as she ventured closer to the riverbank, the waters rolling mightily beside her. In her mind, the waves whispered reminders of her past, yet beneath the surface lay the promise of her future. The Israelites were about to embark across those waters, and she knew she would follow, not as a mere spectator but as one chosen. "Rahab," came a voice from behind, and she turned to find Joshua approaching her once more, flanked by the elders. "We have spoken of your faith, and God has spoken to us about your place among his people. Panic coursed through her. But I am unworthy, a woman of sin. How could I lead a life worthy in the eyes of your God? She hesitated, searching his expression, her voice trembling like the breeze above the water. Joshua extended his hand toward her and spoke with gentleness and strength. Your faith has set you apart, child of hope. You are not defined by your past, indeed, it is your faith that has delivered you. The Lord is with you. Go forth and guide your family into a new land, for you shall be a linchpin in a lineage that will reveal his mercy to generations. Her heart thudded like the drum of war, each beat pulsing with both dread and exhilaration. Joshua's words echoed within her, resonating with the depth of truth. Her life as an outcast would become a testimony, a beacon for others lost in the shadows. With renewed strength, Rahab watched as the priests approached the river, the Ark of the Covenant in their hands, symbolizing God's presence. She felt the weight of expectation as they stepped into the shallow waters. Suddenly, the riverbed began to part, reminiscent of the Red Sea divided before her ancestors. Awe swept through the crowd while she gasped in amazement. This was a declaration from God. Her past was not a chain, but a bridge leading her to redemption. One by one, the Israelites crossed, led by Joshua and the faithful, and as she stepped forward, she understood that the Lord had enveloped her in his purpose. She was now a partaker of this promise. With her family close, she stepped boldly into the rushing stream, her foot finding solid ground where once there was only uncertainty. The air vibrated with the cries of the people, and in that moment, at the confluence of her past and future, she recognized that God was shaping her destiny. Yet as the waters roared and the celebration intensified, a profound truth remained nestled in her spirit: what would be the path of her descendants? Would they walk in faith or turn away? Could they carry forth the story of their mother's redemption, shining light into the world's deepest darkness? And so, Rahab's heart danced. With both hope and fear, knowing that the tale of her legacy was just beginning, a narrative intertwining with the promise of the Messiah and the beloved line of David. But the ultimate question lingered in the air, echoing like a whisper from the divine: would her legacy change the course of history itself? The stage was set, and the unfolding story of God's sovereign plan awaited its next chapter. As the last of the Israelites crossed the Jordan River, the ground trembled beneath their feet, a testament to the living God who had parted the waters. The sun shone brightly upon the wet earth, glistening like the hope that radiated amongst the people. With every step they took into the promised land, a new chapter of their history unfolded. Breathless, Rahab felt the power of God's promise surging through her veins, intertwining her very existence with that of his chosen nation. "O Lord, your presence is mighty," she whispered, her heart swelling with gratitude. The cool river water still dripped from her feet, reminding her of the miraculous transition she had made from a life cast aside to one enveloped in divine purpose. The throngs rejoiced, their voices ascending like a sweet aroma to the heavens, harmonizing with the heart of him who calls the sinner home. Joshua, having received the Lord's instructions, turned his gaze to the men of valor who formed the backbone of the Israelite army. "Set up 12 stones from the river," he declared, his voice clear and commanding. "Let them be a sign among you that the Lord your God dried up the waters of the Jordan before you until you had crossed over, just as he did with the Red Sea." The people rallied, eager to fulfill this command, knowing that each stone would serve as a testimony of God's faithfulness to future generations. Amidst the labor, Rahab stepped forward, her identity now deeply intertwined with her new family. She felt a surge of boldness as she approached Joshua and offered, "Let me help." Her past, full of shame, transformed into a badge of honor as she collaborated with those who once regarded her as an outcast. Together, they gathered the stones, which seemed to gleam with the promise of what was to come. Yet even amidst the joy, Rahab felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. In the quietude of her heart, she wrestled with the memory of her former life. Would the people embrace the story of a former harlot? She glanced at her family, those she had sheltered within her walls when hope was but a flicker, and knew that she must be bold. Her faith must carry forth. She summoned her courage and stood beside Joshua, her voice steady as she proclaimed her conviction. "Let the stones speak of grace. Let them tell of how the Lord redeemed a sinner and transformed her into a vessel of his promise. The community abetted, their eyes transfixed on Rahab, a woman whose faith had woven her into the fabric of their story. Joshua nodded, affirming her spirit. Indeed, let your faith be a legacy, Rahab. As God has brought you into our midst, so too shall you be a testament of his mercy. With the stones positioned at Gilgal, the Israelites gathered around, hearts ignited by the shared story of redemption. As Joshua recounted their journey from captivity to freedom, Rahab received their gaze, unyielding and proud. With each word, she felt the chains of her past tremble and fall away, a revelation that she had truly stepped into the light of God's purpose. However, in the depths of her spirit, another truth lingered: what awaited them in this new land? She could foresee the challenges that lay ahead: a land filled with giants and fortified cities, a realm that could easily strike fear in the hearts of men. Would her faith be strong enough to guide her family through impending trials? And as the shadows stretched across the camp under the setting sun, a whisper from the Almighty reached her: your story shall be a bridge, Rahab. A bridge that leads to the salvation of many. Little did she know how profoundly this promise would unfold through her lineage: seeds of faith planted in the very soil of her transformation, destined to grow toward a divine fulfillment. For as dawn approached over the horizon of her new life, a glorious plan lingered beyond sight, a plan that would shape not just her family, but the entire course of history itself. What would this promise yield, and how would her legacy intertwine with the unfolding story of the Messiah? The mystery deepened as Rahab's heart dared to hope. As the first light of dawn kissed the hills of Canaan, the Israelites rose with a heart full of expectation. They gathered, encircling the 12 stones laid carefully at Gilgal, each one a testimony to the faithfulness of the Lord. Joshua rose among them, his voice ringing with authority and hope, a call to rally the hearts of God's chosen people. Israelites, today marks a new chapter. He proclaimed. The Lord has brought us across the Jordan, ushering us into a land flowing with milk and honey, a promise realized for generations. We shall take possession of this land, for the Lord our God is with us. The people responded with a roar, their hearts ignited by faith, each soul a vessel of promise. Yet amidst the chorus of victory, Rahab stood apart, her heart attuned to the whisper of the Almighty. What shall I do now, O Lord? She prayed, her spirit restless. She contemplated the battles that loomed on the horizon, walls that towered, armies that swelled, and the weight of her family's fate rested heavily upon her shoulders. As if in answer, a figure approached her amidst the throng, a man clad in armor, the gleam of steel matching the confidence etched upon his brow. It was Caleb, one of the faithful spies who had once traversed the land long ago. Rahab, daughter of the living God, he called, extending his hand. Fear not, for your faith shall be a guiding light in our path. The Lord has counted you worthy, and his promise shall extend through you. Caleb, she replied, her voice trembling yet resolute, I question if my past can serve any purpose in the kingdom to come. Your past is but a seed, Caleb responded, a fire kindling in his eyes. Planted in fertile soil, it shall bloom into a testimony. The Lord has chosen you to be a herald of his grace, a woman whose lineage will echo through the ages. Do not doubt his sovereign plan. Encouraged by his words, Rahab felt an awakening within her spirit. Amidst the gathering throng, she saw faces filled with anticipation, yet concerned with the shadows of battles not yet fought. As they commenced preparations for the taking of Jericho, she vowed silently to stand firm, to be a beacon of faith. The sun climbed higher, and the march toward Jericho commenced. With the Ark of the Covenant, a symbol of God's presence, leading them, the people walked in faith, their rallying cries resonating through the valleys. But even as their numbers swelled, Rahab felt a flicker of fear, a reminder of the fierce warriors who resided within the fortified walls they approached. Lord, how shall we conquer the walled city of Jericho? She whispered, her hands shaking. And in that moment, a vision formed in her mind, a vision of the scarlet cord that hung in her window, a full measure of her faith. O God, she cried, let this cord stand as a sign of your promise to safeguard my family amidst the coming storm. As the Israelites encircled the city, the sound of trumpets shattered the silence, their echoes mingling with their fervent faith. The earth trembled beneath them, and the walls of Jericho began to quiver, but in the heart of Rahab, there was a steady resolve. She would be the keeper of her family's fate, she would prove the Lord's faithfulness. The army surged forward, each footfall a testament to belief, and Rahab held her breath, praying for deliverance, certain that her story was now knitted within the tapestry of divine grace. But even as the walls of Jericho began to crumble, a divine mystery lingered in the air, a spiritual revelation yet to unfold. What role would Rahab play in the coming days? And how would her legacy unite itself with the grand narrative of redemption? The promise lingered, and the unfolding story of the Messiah awaited the revelation of God's sovereign plan. As the sun hung high, its rays piercing the dust-laden air of Jericho, the Israelites marched relentlessly around the city. The walls, formidable and proud, cast long shadows over the path of promise laid before them. With each trumpet blast, fear surged within the hearts of the inhabitants, a harbinger of the divine wrath that loomed ever closer. But amidst this fear, faith blossomed in unexpected places. Rahab, standing on the brink of destiny, peered down from her window, the scarlet cord dangling like a lifeline, a testament to her unwavering belief. "Surely, O Lord, you shall not forsake that which you have promised," she murmured, her voice barely audible over the clarion calls of the trumpets. Her heart beat wildly, echoing the thundering march of Israel's warriors, and in that primal rhythm, she felt the weight of both risk and hope. As the seventh day dawned and the Israelites encircled the city for the final time, Rahab's spirit fluttered like the scarlet thread she had hung. The air thickened with anticipation, every eye fastened on the crumbling power of Jericho's walls. Joshua, commanding the people like a seasoned shepherd, called out, "Shout! For the Lord has given you the city." The command resonated through the air, and with one voice, the people cried out, unleashing their fervor into the heavens. In that climactic moment, the ground quaked, and the walls of Jericho fell as though the very fabric of reality had been unraveled. Dust and debris engulfed the city, where once stood a fortress now reduced to rubble by the hand of Almighty God. But Rahab remained steadfast, her faith an anchor amidst the chaos. She watched the destruction but saw the glimmer of God's faithfulness shining through the haze of despair. "Let the spies know," she called out, her voice rising above the tumult. "For my family shall be spared, as promised." She felt the urgency of her words as they danced through the dust, racing to find the men who had saved her. Meanwhile, the warriors of Israel surged forward, their battle cries mingling with the sound of crumbling stone, intent on completing the task the Lord had set before them. As the soldiers entered Jericho, their hearts pounding with both divine purpose and human emotion, they guided themselves to the only home marked by the red cord, a beacon of hope amidst the pandemonium. Joshua, with fervent zeal, sought Rahab even through the remnants of the fallen city. Approaching her dwelling, he found her waiting faithful, loyal, and resolutely confident in the promise of her deliverance. "Rahab," he called with gravity, "come forth. You and your family shall be saved, for you have shown faith in the midst of calamity." As she stepped from her home, joining the Israelites who had been chosen for this monumental task, joy surged through her veins. She clutched her family close, their lives a testament to her belief. Together they emerged from the wreckage of Jericho, witnesses to the power of God's faithfulness and redemption. Yet, amidst the celebration, an undercurrent of divine purpose lingered, a whisper of a greater plan unfurling in the expanse of history. For as Rahab, once a harlot, stood among the people of the covenant, she was not merely a survivor, she was destined to become part of the lineage that would bring forth the Messiah, the same unyielding grace that would traverse centuries and span all nations. And as the dust settled and the echoes of the past faded, a solemn truth dawned: what was once dismissed can be chosen and redeemed. In this moment, the divine tapestry of God's sovereign plan began to weave its intricate threads into the very fabric of redemption itself, inviting all to witness the unfolding story of grace, hope, and the promise yet to come. And it came to pass after the dust had settled and the cries of victory died down, that Joshua called forth the men of Israel who had gone to spy out the land. They approached him, their faces still reflecting the wonder and reverence of the moment. "Behold, with the walls of Jericho fallen, we stand at the threshold of God's covenant promise," Joshua declared, his voice reverberating with spiritual authority. "But let us not forget the faithful one who secured our deliverance." He turned his gaze toward Rahab, who stood among the throng, her heart swelling with both gratitude and humility. "Come hither, Rahab," he beckoned, and she stepped forward. "You have shown great courage, and your faith has been counted as righteousness. You and your household are to dwell among us, become a cherished part of our people. Your deliverance is now complete." The assembly marveled as Rahab joined the ranks of Israel, her heart beating in time with theirs. In an instant, the past that had once defined her faded as the reality of her present took root, blooming into a future filled with hope. She heard the whispered words of the women around her, "Is it true she was a harlot?" Yet the stares held no contempt, but rather a deep respect for what God could accomplish through a willing heart. As they settled amidst the people, the priests who bore the Ark of the Covenant raised it high, a visible reminder of God's presence. They gathered to offer sacrifices of thanksgiving and praise, the sweet aroma rising like incense to the heavens. Songs filled the air, harmonizing with the voices of the redeemed as they reflected on the astonishing works of God. Together, they commemorated the day the Lord delivered them, and the families of Israel rejoiced for what their God had wrought. But the spirit of divine suspense lingered, the atmosphere charged with a sense of God's greater purpose yet to be revealed. Rahab felt a stirring in her heart, a whisper of the plan that lay beyond her current redemption. "Surely, the Lord has a design for me that transcends these walls," she pondered, her gaze drawn toward the horizon. As she regarded the land that lay before them, a land flowing with milk and honey, she sensed that she was merely a foundational stone in a structure still being built by God's mighty hands. Days turned into weeks, and the conquest of Canaan rolled forth, cities fell, and victories were won. And yet, amidst the preparations for the battles ahead, the lineage of God's redemptive story began to unfold silently in Rahab's household. The whispers of her past faded not into silence, but into the songs of her descendants who would walk in faith and bear witness to the God who saves. As the people of Israel advanced, a prophet arose among them, bringing forth the words of the Lord. "Hear, O Israel! From the least of you to the greatest, know this, I will bless those who bless you, and in you shall all the families of the earth be blessed." And Rahab stood amongst the multitude, her heart resonating with the prophetic promise. Little did she realize, her very own child would be included in the genealogy of the Promised One, a direct passageway to the Savior, the ground of her faith being laid among the faithful souls of the past and the future. And so, the Lord whispered through the winds of time, "What has been obscured in the past will shine forth in glory, for the foundations of my promise are being laid in unexpected places." And it came to pass that as Israel continued their march through the land of Canaan, the sun rose high in the sky, casting golden light upon the fields ripe for harvest. Joshua, filled with the Spirit of the Lord, summoned the leaders of the tribes to gather beneath the oak tree of More, which stood as a witness to God's promises. "From the outset of our journey, the Lord has commanded us," Joshua proclaimed, his voice echoing among the gathered. "We shall not falter, nor shall we forget the provisions set before us. For it is not by our might, but by the hand of God that we will conquer the nations." The leaders nodded, their hearts ignited with zeal, and they responded in unison, "As the Lord commands, so shall we do." Yet amidst their preparations, a voice rose from within the assembly, a young woman whose heart beat in rhythm with the covenant promises. It was Rahab, standing before them, a resolute look in her eyes. "O Joshua, let me speak. I was once unseen in the shadows, but now the light shines upon me. I desire to be a vessel for the Lord's work among our people." Joshua, surprised yet intrigued, gestured for her to continue. "Speak, Rahab, and let your voice be heard." With passion, Rahab shared her vision of a stronghold in the heart of the land she once knew as home. "I wish to build a house of prayer for the Lord, a sanctuary amid the strife, a place where the weary can find refuge, and the lost can be restored." A murmur spread across the crowd, some spoke of skepticism, while others recognized the faith that had brought her this far. But Joshua, sensing a divine confirmation, raised his hand for silence. "Rahab, your faith has brought you among us, and your desire for the house of the Lord shall not be disregarded. God has chosen the humble and the broken to carry his light. Let us seek his guidance." With that, Joshua called upon the elders and craftsmen to stand beside Rahab, as they conceded to begin work on the house she envisioned. Days stretched into weeks, and the sound of hammers and joy-filled laughter filled the air, forging a unique bond amongst those who had once regarded her with suspicion. As the structure arose from the earth, Rahab's heart swelled with hope and expectancy. She envisioned not merely walls, but an extension of God's grace to all who would enter. And more than that, she recalled her own testimony how the Lord had seen her in her plight and had lifted her from obscurity. The day came when the house was unveiled, adorned with tapestries of praise, and Rahab stood at the entrance. A gathering of Israelite families approached, drawn not only by curiosity but by the spirit that accompanied them. "Come and see." Rahab beckoned. "Come and find a place of mercy, here where the Lord dwells." And as she welcomed them, whispers of her story spread throughout the camp. "Is this not the harlot from Jericho?" Some marveled, while others whispered, "She is no longer just that, she is now our sister in faith." As laughter and songs of praise filled the house, a shadow lingered upon Rahab's heart. She sensed in her spirit that this was the beginning of something far greater, something that would intertwine her legacy with that of the Israelite nation. Amidst the feasting, a messenger appeared, his face a canvas of urgency. He called out for the leaders, declaring, "Hear the word of the Lord. He says, from this place of refuge shall arise a beacon for my people. Through you, Rahab, I will establish a lineage that transcends generations." The entirety of Israel stood hushed, the weight of the declaration settling amid their joyous celebration. In that moment, as Rahab met the eyes of her fellow Israelites, she understood. "What I did not foresee was the Lord weaving my life into his grand tapestry," she pondered, awe-stricken. And a whisper went forth, not just through the house but into the very fabric of their hearts, "As the shadows retreat, my sovereign plan unfolds, and through faith, what appears inconsequential becomes instrumental in the promise of redemption." In the twilight of history, it came to pass that Rahab's faith bore fruit, intertwining her life/legacy with the eternal plan of the Almighty. As the sun dipped below the hills of Canaan, painting the sky in fiery hues, she gathered with the people of Israel, no longer a mere outsider, but a chosen vessel woven into the very fabric of God's covenant promise. Joshua, faithful leader and servant of the Lord, stood among them, and with a voice seasoned by divine authority, he declared, "It is time to build a legacy upon the foundation of faith. Let us remember our God, who saw Rahab in her sin and called her forth into his marvelous light." The assembly echoed his words, the voice of the people rising like the sound of a refreshing stream, a testimony to the ongoing works of God among them. "Your courage has inspired many, Rahab," he continued, turning his gaze toward her, "but let us not merely reflect on the past, our future is forged through your faith. You shall be a light unto generations, a guiding star for those who walk in the shadows." Rahab, humbled and overwhelmed, felt the weight of sacred responsibility settle upon her shoulders. How could she, once marked by her past, stand as a beacon of truth? With each passing day, the people gathered at her house of prayer, seeking solace and wisdom. Families shared their stories of redemption. The tale of Rahab became not one of shame, but of victory, a narrative that painted divine grace upon the canvases of their hearts. In the presence of the Israelites, Rahab shared her testimony of faith, the story of the scarlet cord, the spies, and the voice of the Lord who never forsakes. And in time, a divine decree stirred within her heart as she bore a child, her firstborn, a son destined to continue the legacy of faith that had been etched by the hand of God. With a heart full of hope, she named him Boaz, a name that would echo through the annals of history as a symbol of redemption and grace. As years stretched on, under the guiding presence of the Lord, Rahab witnessed her lineage flourish, becoming a vital link in the genealogy of David and, ultimately, of the Messiah. In faithfulness, she watched the divine plan unfold, each descendant a testimony of God's unyielding promise to save, to redeem, and to establish a legacy for generations yet unborn. At the appointed time, when the world was shrouded in darkness, the Messiah arrived, born not in grandeur, but in humility. Rahab's heart swelled with both pride and gratitude, for she recognized that her past was a mere prologue to God's greater narrative, a living testament of divine love for the world. As the whispers of her story echoed through the ages, it was not merely her legacy that shone, but the faithfulness of the one who had called her from the shadows. The scarlet cord, a symbol of her faith, transformed into a promise of salvation for all who would believe, crossing barriers of history, nationality, and sin. And in the solemnity of shared remembrance, the people of Israel continued to tell her story, a reminder that no one is beyond the reach of God's grace. For in the tapestry of his wondrous works, Rahab, the former harlot, was woven into the fabric of the divine story, her life, a brilliant thread of redemption, forever a part of the promises fulfilled. As her heart filled with peace, Rahab looked into the faces of her family, her children, her children's children. She embraced them with a fervent faith, knowing that God had abundantly poured his grace upon her and would continue to do so. With each breath she took, every word she spoke, she whispered into their souls, "You are blessed, for you are part of a greater narrative, a living testimony of the love of God." Thus, the story of Rahab concluded, but the echoes of her faith resounded into eternity, a clarion call that encourages all to boldly step into the embrace of divine redemption, transforming lives, families, and the course of history itself. For the God who saved Rahab still saves today. Journey forward in faith, dear reader, for a legacy of hope awaits you as well. Open your heart, allow his story to intertwine with yours, and be a part of his plan, a testament of love and redemption for countless generations. Now, before we part ways, I invite you subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next powerful biblical stories that inspire and uplift your spirit. Leave a like now to help spread God's word through the algorithm, reaching those who need to hear the message of hope. Your comments on how this biblical account has impacted your faith journey mean the world. And don't wait even one more second, share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to embrace God's truth. Only true believers know the importance of supporting biblical content to shine his light far and wide. Join us as we carry forth the message of grace and redemption.